Amara deleted the text before hitting send. Again. For the third time in 10 minutes, she'd typed out some variation of, "Are you still coming home for dinner?" Each version slightly different, trying to find the perfect tone that would make her husband Juno actually respond. Not too needy. Not too demanding. Just the right amount of casual that wouldn't make him feel pressured, but would still make him want to come home. She stared at the blank message thread, at the pattern she'd been living for 3 years, her texts in blue bubbles stacking up like a tower of hope, occasionally interrupted by his gray responses. Busy. Maybe. Don't wait up. Her finger hovered over the keyboard. Then, for the first time in 3 years of marriage, Amara did something revolutionary. She closed the messaging app without typing anything. She put her phone face down on the counter. She took the elaborate meal she'd spent 2 hours preparing, Juno's favorite Korean dishes that she'd learned from YouTube, plus the jollof rice he'd once said he loved, and she sat down at the table. And she ate alone. Not waiting. Not hoping. Not checking her phone every 30 seconds to see if he'd magically decided she was worth coming home to. For the first time in 3 years, Amara stopped begging. And that's when everything changed. If you've ever exhausted yourself trying to earn love from someone who should have given it freely, if you've ever made yourself smaller hoping it would make someone want you more, stay with me. Because this is the story of what happens when you finally stop. Amara had always been the kind of woman who tried too hard. It was her fatal flaw, her mother used to say, though not unkindly. When Amara wanted something, she pursued it with the kind of relentless determination that built empires or destroyed self-respect, depending on what she was chasing. She'd gotten into Cambridge that way. Studied until her eyes burned and her fingers cramped. Applied to every scholarship, wrote essay after essay, refused to accept that a girl from a small town in Kenya couldn't make it to one of the world's best universities. She'd built her career that way. Started at the bottom of a sole marketing firm as the only Black woman in the building, worked every weekend, took on every impossible project, proved herself again and again until she was managing international campaigns worth millions of dollars. But with Juno, trying hard had become something else. Something that looked less like ambition and more like desperation. They'd met at a company event 4 years ago. Juno was a senior developer, quiet and intelligent with the kind of understated handsomeness that sneaked up on you. He hadn't ignored her the way some Korean men did when they saw her dark skin and coily hair. He'd approached her, started a conversation about the presentation she'd given, asked thoughtful questions. Their courtship had been slow and sweet. Coffee dates that turned into dinner dates. Long walks along the Han River. He'd introduced her to his favorite bookshops and she'd taken him to Itaewon's African restaurants. He'd been fascinated by her stories about growing up in Nairobi, about her big, loud, loving family. She'd loved how he listened, really listened, like her words mattered. He'd proposed after a year, and Amara had said yes with her whole heart. The wedding was small, his family had been politely distant, but she'd told herself they just needed time. Her family had flown in from Kenya, filling the venue with warmth and joy and the kind of unrestrained celebration that made some of Juno's relatives uncomfortable. "They're very loud," Juno's mother had said in Korean, not knowing Amara had been learning the language. "They're very loving," Amara had corrected in Korean, and the surprise on the woman's face had been worth the months of secret study. The first year of marriage had been good. Not perfect, what marriage is, but good. Juno was thoughtful in quiet ways. He'd bring home her favorite snacks without being asked. He'd rub her feet when she'd had a long day. He wasn't verbose or demonstrative, but Amara had told herself that was just cultural difference. Korean men weren't raised to be emotionally expressive. She could work with that. But somewhere in the second year, something shifted. Juno started working later, coming home exhausted and uncommunicative. When Amara would try to talk to him about his day, he'd give one-word answers. When she'd suggest date nights or weekend trips, he'd say he was too tired, too busy, too stressed. And Amara had started trying harder. She'd wake up early to make him elaborate breakfasts. He'd eat them while scrolling through his phone, barely noticing the effort. She'd plan romantic evenings. He'd cancel at the last minute for work drinks or team dinners she wasn't invited to. She'd learned to cook his mother's recipes, hoping to bridge the gap with his family. His mother would taste them and say, "It's different from how I make it," with a smile that wasn't quite kind. The more Juno pulled away, the harder Amara chased. It was pathological, she'd later realize. Like, she believed if she could just find the right combination of words, the right gesture, the right version of herself, he'd suddenly see her again. Want her again. Love her the way he had in the beginning. She bought books on Korean culture, thinking maybe she was missing something. She changed her hair, her clothes, her entire personality trying to figure out what would make him stay home. She became an expert at reading his moods, adjusting her behavior to avoid his irritation. "Did you have a good day?" she'd ask carefully when he came home. "Fine," he'd respond, not looking at her. "I made dinner. Your favorite." "I already ate. Maybe we could watch a movie together?" "I'm tired. Going to bed." Every interaction was a negotiation for his attention. Every conversation was her trying to find the magic words that would make him engage. She felt like she was constantly auditioning for the role of his wife, never quite booking the part. Her friends noticed. Her sister Wanjiko visited from Kenya and pulled her aside. "Amara, what happened to you?" Wanjiko had asked, watching Amara fuss over whether Juno's shirt was ironed correctly. "You used to be so, yourself. Now you're like a ghost, floating around trying not to take up space." "I'm just being a good wife," Amara had defended. Being a good wife isn't the same as erasing yourself. But Amara hadn't listened. She'd been too busy trying to prove she was worth keeping. The breaking point came 3 weeks ago. Juno's company dinner was on the same night as Amara's work awards ceremony. She was receiving recognition for a major campaign she'd led. She'd told him about it weeks in advance, marked it on the calendar, reminded him multiple times. The morning of the event, she'd asked again. "You're still coming tonight, right? The ceremony starts at 7. "Yeah, sure," he'd said, not looking up from his coffee. Amara had been so happy she'd cried in the shower. He was coming. He was actually going to support her, see her be recognized, be proud of her. Maybe this would be the turning point. Maybe he'd remember why he'd married her. She'd bought a new dress. Had her hair done. Practiced her acceptance speech, imagining him in the audience. 7 p.m. came and went. Amara accepted her award to applause, searched the crowd for Juno's face, didn't find it. She gave her speech to a room full of colleagues and clients and strangers, smiled for photos, made small talk, all while checking her phone compulsively. At 9 p.m., she finally texted, "Where are you?" At 9:47, he responded, "Company dinner ran late. Can't make it. Congrats on the award." Amara had stood in the bathroom of the venue, staring at that message, and felt something inside her finally break. Not her heart, that had been broken for months. Something deeper. The part of her that kept trying, kept hoping, kept begging. She'd gone home that night, changed out of her beautiful dress, and sat in the dark living room waiting for him. He'd come home at midnight, stumbling slightly, smelling like soju. "Did you have fun?" he'd asked, like it was a normal question. Like he hadn't just missed the most important night of her career. "No," Amara had said. "I didn't." "Oh. Sorry." He'd headed toward the bedroom. "Juno." Her voice had stopped him. "Why did you marry me?" He'd turned, confused. "What? Why did you marry me if you didn't want to be married to me?" "Amara, I'm drunk. Can we not do this now? When should we do it? When you're home. When you're paying attention. Because that never happens. You're being dramatic. I got an award tonight. For the campaign that's making my company millions of dollars. I got recognized as one of the top marketers in Seoul. And you couldn't be bothered to show up. I told you, the company dinner. You chose drinks with your colleagues over supporting your wife." Again. Amara had stood up. "I'm tired, Juno. I'm so tired of begging you to give a damn about me." "I do give a damn." "Do you?" "Because from where I'm standing, you give a damn about your job. About your friends. About your phone. About everything except your marriage." Juno had run his hand through his hair, frustrated. "What do you want from me, Amara? I work hard. I provide for us. What more do you want?" "I want you to want me," she'd said quietly. "I want to matter to you. I want to feel like your wife, Not your roommate who cooks and cleans and waits for you to decide I'm worth your time. You're being unfair. Am I? Tell me 3 things about my life right now. 3 things about what I'm working on, what I care about, what I'm worried about. Tell me anything about me that isn't what I can do for you. The silence had been devastating. That's what I thought, Amara had said. She'd gone to the bedroom, closed the door, and cried herself to sleep. The next morning, Juno had acted like nothing happened. That was his way, conflict avoidance to an extreme. If he ignored the problem, maybe it would disappear. But Amara didn't disappear. She stayed. And she tried harder. Because that's what she did. That's what she'd always done. When something wasn't working, you tried harder, right? You fixed it. You adapted. You became what was needed. For 3 more weeks, she'd exhausted herself trying to salvage a marriage where she was the only one trying. Until today. Until the moment she'd stared at her phone, at yet another text she was drafting to beg for his attention, and something inside her just stopped. She'd spent 3 years believing that if she could just love him enough, be perfect enough, try hard enough, he'd love her back. But you can't earn love by diminishing yourself. You can't win someone's heart by giving away your own. So Amara ate her dinner alone. She didn't text, didn't call, didn't wait by the door or check the clock or create narratives about where he might be. She just existed. For herself. For the first time in 3 years, she didn't make her entire emotional state dependent on whether Juno decided she was worth coming home to. It felt strange. Wrong, almost. Like she was breaking some unspoken rule of marriage. Wives were supposed to wait, weren't they? Supposed to care, to check in, to maintain the connection? But Amara had been maintaining the connection for 3 years. Single-handedly keeping their marriage alive through sheer force of will. And she was done. After dinner, she didn't do the dishes. Didn't clean the kitchen. Didn't prepare his portion of food to reheat. She left everything exactly as it was, poured herself a glass of wine, and did something she hadn't done in months. She read a book. Just sat on the couch with a novel she'd been meaning to read, drank her wine, and disappeared into someone else's story. Not his story. Not their story. Just a story. Juno came home at 11 p.m. Amara heard his key in the door, his footsteps in the entryway, but she didn't jump up. Didn't greet him. Didn't ask about his day. She just kept reading. He appeared in the doorway of the living room, loosening his tie. Hey, Amara replied, not looking up from her book. A pause. Did you eat already? Yes. Another pause, longer this time. She could feel his confusion. This wasn't how their evenings usually went. Usually she'd be asking him about his day, offering to heat up food, trying to engage him in conversation. Did you save me any dinner? There's food in the kitchen, Amara said, turning a page. Help yourself. She felt rather than saw his surprise. He stood there another moment, clearly waiting for her to offer to serve him, to heat it up, to do what she always did. When she didn't move, he eventually went to the kitchen. She heard him opening containers, the microwave beeping. The sounds of him serving himself food she'd cooked but wasn't offering. He came back into the living room with his plate, sat in the armchair across from her. This is good. Thanks. Still reading. What are you reading? A book. I can see that. What book? Amara finally looked up. Does it matter? Are you actually interested, or are you just filling silence because I'm not doing my usual routine of asking you 20 questions you'll answer in monosyllables? Juno's face did something complicated. Surprise, maybe. Or guilt. You're acting strange. I'm reading a book. In my own living room. How is that strange? You're just different. Different how? He struggled to articulate it. Because what could he say? You're different because you're not trying to please me? You're different because you're not begging for my attention? Never mind, he finally said. He ate his dinner in silence while Amara read her book. The only sound was his fork against the plate and the occasional page turn. When he finished, he put his plate in the sink, didn't wash it, just left it there, and went to the bedroom. Amara stayed on the couch until midnight, reading, drinking wine, existing in her own space without making it about him. When she finally went to bed, Juno was asleep. Or pretending to be. She didn't try to wake him for a conversation. Didn't curl against him hoping he'd respond. She just laid on her side of the bed and went to sleep. The next morning, she got up when her alarm rang, made herself breakfast, got ready for work. She didn't make Juno's breakfast. Didn't ask if he wanted coffee. Didn't do any of the small acts of service she'd been performing for 3 years. She just got herself ready and left for work. At the office, her colleague Mincio noticed immediately. You look different. Different how? I don't know. Lighter? Like you lost weight, but not really. Amara laughed. I stopped carrying something heavy. What? Doesn't matter. Tell me about the Lee account. She threw herself into work with a focus she hadn't had in months. Usually, part of her brain was always on Juno, wondering what he was doing, whether she should text him, planning what to make for dinner that might make him happy. But today, she was fully present. Sharp. Creative. Her boss commented on it in their meeting. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it, he said. This is the Amara we hired. She went to lunch with colleagues instead of eating at her desk so she could text Juno. She laughed loudly at jokes without monitoring herself. She felt like she was waking up from a 3-year coma. Her phone buzzed at 3 p.m. Juno, what's for dinner? 3 years ago, that text would have sent her into planning mode. What did he want? What would make him happy? What could she cook that would make him smile? Today, she typed back, I don't know. What are you making? She could almost feel his confusion through the phone. 5 minutes passed. 10. Finally, I thought you'd cook? I cooked yesterday. You didn't come home for it. I'm not cooking tonight. So, what am I supposed to eat? Amara stared at her phone, at the audacity of a grown man asking his wife what he was supposed to eat like he didn't have hands and a kitchen and a phone that could order food. You're an intelligent man, Juno. I'm sure you'll figure it out. She put her phone away and didn't look at it for the rest of the workday. When she got home at 7 p.m., Juno was already there, early for him. He was in the kitchen and the apartment smelled like food. Not her cooking. Delivery. I ordered Chinese, he said when she came in. Figured if you weren't cooking. Makes sense, Amara said. She went to the bedroom, changed into comfortable clothes, came back out. Juno had set the table. For two. With the containers of Chinese food opened and ready. I got your favorite, he said, gesturing to the mapo tofu. The spicy one you like. Amara sat down, surprised despite herself. Thank you. They ate in silence for a while. Then Juno cleared his throat. So about yesterday. The award. Congratulations. I should have been there. Yes. You should have. I'm sorry. Amara looked at him. Really looked at him. He seemed uncomfortable, like apologizing was painful. Like admitting fault was foreign territory. Why weren't you there? She asked. I told you, the company dinner. No. I mean really. Why weren't you there? Because there's always going to be a company dinner. There's always going to be something more important than me. So I want to know, why? Juno set down his chopsticks. I don't know. That's not good enough. What do you want me to say? I want you to be honest. I want you to tell me why your wife getting an award for her work wasn't important enough to show up for. He was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. Because I knew you'd forgive me. The honesty of it was like a slap. What? You always forgive me. You're always there, always understanding, always making things work. So I knew if I skipped it, you'd be upset, but you'd get over it. You always do. Because I'm too understanding? Because I tried too hard to make this work. I didn't say. No, but you meant it. You've been taking me for granted because I let you. Because I made myself so available, so accommodating, that there was no consequence for treating me like I didn't matter. Juno looked uncomfortable. That's not fair. Isn't it? Amara stood up. I've spent 3 years of our marriage bending over backward, trying to make you happy. Cooking your favorite foods, learning to make your mother's recipes, adjusting my schedule, my personality, my entire existence to be what I thought you wanted. And you know what I got for it? A husband who couldn't be bothered to show up to the most important night of my career. Amara. I'm done begging you to love me, Juno. I'm done trying to earn what should have been freely given. I'm done making myself smaller hoping it would make you want me more. She went to the bedroom, closed the door, and leaned against it, her heart pounding. For the first time in 3 years, she'd said what she actually felt. Not what would keep the peace. Not what would make him comfortable. What she actually felt. And it was terrifying. And liberating. And she had no idea what happened next. The days that followed were strange. Amara maintained her new boundaries. She didn't text Juno throughout the day. Didn't cook elaborate meals. Didn't wait up for him. Didn't ask about his day if he didn't offer. She just lived her life. Went to work. Saw friends. Read books. Went to the gym. Existed as a full person instead of an appendage to her husband. And the strangest thing happened. Juno started paying attention. He started coming home earlier. Started asking about her day, really asking, not just going through the motions. Started planning things for them to do together. Want to go to that new exhibit at the art museum? He'd ask. Maybe Amara would respond. Not yes, not no. Just maybe. She'd stopped being instantly available, stopped dropping everything to accommodate him. It confused him. She could see it in his face. He was used to her eagerness, her desperation for his attention. This new Amara, who might or might not be interested in his offers, who had her own plans and priorities, was foreign to him. One evening, 2 weeks into Amara's new approach, Juno asked, "Are you having an affair?" Amara had been so surprised she'd laughed. "What? You're different. Distant. I thought maybe." "You thought because I'm not begging for your attention, I must be getting it elsewhere? I just don't understand what changed." "I changed. I stopped waiting for you to decide I was worth your time. I stopped making your interest in me the center of my existence. I started living for myself. But you're my wife. Yes, your wife. Not your pet. Not your servant. Not something that exists solely to please you. Your wife. Your partner. Who has her own life and interests and priorities." Juno looked stricken. "I never thought of you as a thing. Didn't you? When's the last time you asked about my work? About my life? About anything that didn't directly relate to you and your comfort?" He couldn't answer. "That's what I thought," Amara said. She wasn't angry anymore. Just tired. Tired of having the same conversation in different variations. Tired of explaining why she deserved basic consideration. 3 weeks after Amara stopped begging, Juno suggested counseling. "I think we should see someone," he said over breakfast. "A therapist. To work on our communication." Amara looked at him surprised. "You want to go to therapy?" I think I've been a bad husband. And I want to fix it. But I don't know how." It was the most honest thing he'd said in months. Years, maybe. "Okay," Amara said. "Let's try therapy." They went to their first session on a Thursday evening. The therapist, Dr. Kim, was a Korean woman in her 50s who'd studied in the US and specialized in intercultural marriages. "Tell me why you're here," she said. Juno looked at Amara. Amara looked back at him, not helping, not jumping in to smooth things over. We're having problems," Juno finally said. "Communication problems. Can you be more specific?" Silence. Juno struggled. Amara waited. "Amara thinks I take her for granted," Juno finally said. "And she's probably right." "Probably?" Amara repeated. "Okay, definitely. Definitely right." Dr. Kim turned to Amara. "And what do you think the problem is?" "I think I spent 3 years of our marriage trying to earn love that should have been given freely. I made myself smaller and smaller trying to fit into what I thought Juno wanted. And I'm done doing that." "What changed?" Dr. Kim asked. Amara thought about it. About the missed awards ceremony, the years of one-sided effort, the slow erosion of herself. "I realized that begging someone to love you doesn't work. Either they do or they don't. And I'd rather be alone than spend my life trying to convince someone I'm worth their time." The session went on. They talked about communication patterns, emotional availability, cultural expectations. Dr. Kim gave them homework. Juno had to list 3 things about Amara's life that didn't relate to him. Amara had to identify one need she'd been suppressing to keep the peace. It was the beginning. Just the beginning. There was no magical fix, no sudden transformation. Juno was trying, but he was also learning how to be a partner for the first time. Amara was learning how to hold boundaries, how to be herself instead of a performance of what she thought a wife should be. Some days were good. Juno would come home and actually engage with her, ask thoughtful questions, be present. Those days, Amara felt hopeful. Some days were bad. Juno would slip back into old patterns, get irritated when Amara didn't immediately accommodate him, seem confused by her independence. Those days, Amara wondered if this was worth it. 1 month after she'd stopped begging, Amara woke up to find Juno already awake, watching her. "What?" she asked, self-conscious. "I'm trying to see you," he said. "Really see you. The way I did when we first met. Before I got comfortable taking you for granted." "And what do you see?" "I see someone strong. Someone who refused to disappear even when I was trying to make her invisible. Someone who stood up for herself when I made it clear she had to." He touched her face gently. "I see my wife. And I'm sorry it took her stopping trying for me to start trying." Amara didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to melt, to accept the apology, to go back to hoping. Part of her was still guarded, still protecting the parts of herself she'd had to hide. "I appreciate that," she finally said. "But Juno, I need you to understand something. I can't go back to who I was. That version of me who bent herself into pretzels trying to please you, she's gone. And she's not coming back." "I don't want her back," Juno said. "I want you. This you. The one who calls me out and has boundaries and lives her own life. I want the woman I married, not the ghost she became trying to keep me happy." It was a good answer. Maybe even the right answer. But Amara had learned that good words weren't enough. She needed to see if actions would follow. "Then show me," she said. "Don't tell me. Show me." 2 months after Amara stopped begging, their marriage existed in a strange liminal space. Better than it had been, but not yet good. Juno was trying, but trying after years of neglect was like trying to patch a boat that had been sinking. Sometimes the water still got in. They were in therapy every week. Having hard conversations. Uncovering patterns. Learning how to be partners instead of two people existing in parallel lives. But there was something Amara hadn't told him. Something she'd discovered a week ago that changed everything. She stared at the test in her hand, at the 2 pink lines that meant her life was about to get infinitely more complicated. She was pregnant. And she had no idea what to do about it. Because bringing a baby into a marriage that was still on life support felt irresponsible. But the thought of ending the pregnancy felt impossible. And telling Juno, who was barely figuring out how to be a husband, felt terrifying. She hid the test in her drawer, under her clothes where he'd never look. She had a week until her next doctor's appointment. A week to figure out what she wanted. What she was willing to accept. What kind of life she wanted to build. That evening, Juno came home with flowers. Not expensive ones, just a small bouquet from the convenience store. But he'd thought to bring them. "For you," he said, almost shy. "Because I wanted to. Not because it's a special occasion. Just because you deserve flowers." Amara took them, feeling the weight of her secret in her chest. "Thank you. I was thinking," Juno continued. "Maybe this weekend we could do something together. Whatever you want. I'll take the day off, we can go anywhere." "Anywhere. Your choice." It was such a small thing. But it was also everything she'd been wanting for 3 years. The simple gift of his attention, freely given. And now she was pregnant, and she had no idea if they were strong enough for this. If they'd repaired enough of the damage. If Juno's growth would hold when faced with the reality of a baby. "Let me think about it," Amara said. That night, lying in bed, Juno asleep beside her, Amara put her hand on her still flat stomach and made a decision. She'd tell him. Tomorrow. She'd tell him, and whatever happened next would tell her everything she needed to know about their marriage. Either he'd step up, or he'd retreat. Either he'd be a partner, or he'd prove that his change was temporary. Either their marriage would survive this, or it wouldn't. But she was done begging. Done trying to force something that should be natural. If Juno wanted this marriage, this family, he'd have to fight for it. And if he didn't, well, Amara had already proven she could survive without his love. She could survive without his partnership too. She closed her eyes and felt, for the first time in 3 years, a strange sense of peace. Not because everything was fixed. Not because she knew what would happen next. but because she'd stopped making herself smaller. She'd stopped begging. She'd stopped trying to earn what should have been freely given. And whatever came next, whether it was a stronger marriage or a new beginning alone, she'd face it as herself. Whole. Undiminished. Free. The next morning, Amara woke up before Juno. She made herself tea and sat at the kitchen table, the pregnancy test wrapped in tissue in her hand. Juno came out of the bedroom, still half asleep. He went to make coffee, then paused, noticing her sitting there with the strange stillness of someone about to say something life-changing. "What's wrong?" he asked. Amara looked at her husband. At this man she'd loved desperately, begged shamelessly, and finally stopped chasing. At this man who was trying, maybe too late, maybe just barely enough. "Juno," she said. "We need to talk." She placed the wrapped tissue on the table between them. And everything changed again. Drop a comment right now telling me what you think happens next. Does Juno step up or retreat? Does this pregnancy save their marriage or break it? What do you think Amara should do? Hit that like button if you've ever stopped begging for someone's love and found yourself in the process. Subscribe because you know this story isn't over, you know there's more coming. And share this with anyone who needs to remember that you can't earn love by making yourself smaller. Until next time, remember this. The moment you stop begging for someone's love is the moment you start reclaiming your own life. And sometimes that's the only thing that can save a relationship or save you from one that was destroying you all along. Whatever happens next for Amara and Juno, one thing is certain, she'll face it as herself. And that's worth more than any love you have to beg for.